Hey everyone, welcome back to the Monday Drive. We are continuing our series where we get to meet all of our mission partners here at Riverside Church. And today we have Better Together here with us. We have Megan Rose, founder of Better Together. And we get to hear a little bit about what they do and how they try to fight to keep kids out of the foster care system and how they incorporate the gospel into that. So Megan, thank you. Thank you for being here. Really excited to be able to sit down and chat.
I'm so excited to be here. Looking forward to it.
Tell us a little bit about you, just who you are, your family. Give us a kind of picture, and then a little bit about what is Better Together. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so I am a mom of 4 just amazing children, a 7-year-old boy named Brady, 5-year-old girl named Ellie, and then 3-year-old little girl named Emma, and a 1-year-old little girl named Ava, and married 8 years to my husband, Mason. Awesome. Who's my best friend and my partner. We are Florida natives, both of us, and just, Florida born, brewed, just love this area, and started Better Together back in 2016, which is 8 years, which is crazy.
Time flies.
Yes, and just out of just my own personal story, but also working in the foster care system and just seeing the trauma, meeting the families, and seeing their love for their children, but just a lot of them didn't have good options. They didn't have the support they needed. And so Better Together really was born out of that and my own story of how God has just worked in our family. And what we do is we just work with churches, and we believe a body of believers can change the world. Yeah. And how we do that is we will connect them, just similar to Uber. We'll connect the helpers within the church to community members who are just struggling and they have literally no one to call. They're struggling with mental health, addiction, job loss, homelessness. But it's not to the point where DCF needs to get involved and remove their children. They can only step in once a child's been abused and neglected. So this gives us, the church, an opportunity to come alongside them, fill in that gap, prevent a child experience abuse and neglect, and love on that family, and walk alongside them. And we do that by welcoming children to our home short term, and loving on those parents and encouraging them. Our team helps them meet goals and get on a better path and help them help themselves. And then we also do that through mentorship and then jobs.
That's awesome. And so I know we've talked a little bit, and so I know that Better Together is personal to you. And so how did that kind of desire, that heart in you start? What was that from?
So when I was growing up, life was hard. My parents really struggled. My mom and dad were doing what they could to make ends meet. But my dad had lost his job, and it just spiraled to a bad place very quickly. He wasn't able to find another job. That led to some depression, which led to drinking, which led to an addiction to opiates, which led to my dad coming home really drunk and really angry one night. And I was just a little girl, 6 years old. I didn't know better, but my dad had my mom cornered in the kitchen with a shotgun. And I was convinced that was it. I was so convinced something was going to happen to my mom. And so I grabbed a baseball bat. I talked to my brothers behind the couch, and I grabbed a baseball bat, and I put myself in between my mom and my dad, and I just begged them to stop. And it was in that moment I can see my dad's face, and his eyes filled up with tears, and he left. I don't know where he went that night. But my mom knew she needed to leave. The situation was no longer healthy or safe. But she couldn't do it alone. She had 3 small children. She needed support. So she had a connection with a local church. They came alongside our family, helped my mom just put those pieces of her precious life back together. But they didn't stop there. They cared about my dad too. And they loved on him. Even when he went to prison for substance abuse, they still connected with him, encouraged him, prayed for him. And he ended up getting saved in prison. And they mentored him, helped him find a job once he got out of prison. And I saw as a young teen just the power of a job and helping us being able to heal as a family. And because of those relationships and people inserting themselves into our messiness, my parents got remarried, and they came to know the Lord because of it. And it was transformational for our family. And I am so grateful we had that connection. And the church came alongside us and embraced our brokenness and our messiness. But so many families in our community don't have that connection.
Yep.
And they struggle alone, and two things become too much to bear. And that's where you see divorce. You see children being abused and neglected. You see the breakdown of a family.
Yep. I love every time we've talked, I hear you keep saying the word, like, where the church can stand in the gap. And I love that the model that you guys have relies on the church being the church and creating a space for us, the church, the body, to be that bridge and to start to bridge the gap for those families, just like happened for yours. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful model that was, for better and for worse, modeled for you as a kid. And now you get to help lead that change both here and then all around Florida, which is amazing.
Yeah, I truly believe the church and God's people are one of the most powerful forces in America, but I think the least leveraged. And it's historically, if you look back at the needs of children and families, it was the church really standing in the gap. There was rights for animals and protections in place for animals before children, because the church was caring for the widows, the orphans. They were starting hospitals. They were so involved. Civil society was, flourishing. And I believe, and this is our vision for Better Together, is to see the church really step up, fill in that gap, and make government less relevant, because children are being cared for, families are being loved on. We're helping them discover God, Christ's love for them and their purpose and their meaning, connecting them to the community of the church, and seeing just our cities just shift in a different direction.
Yep. So natural question I think people would ask, or I ask in my head, like, is it working? And I know we talked a couple of weeks ago at lunch, but like, tell us there's some stat that you were talking about in Lee County. Like, is it working? How would you answer some of that?
So it has been amazing, because, we sometimes, we don't get 100% all the time.
Yeah.
We have families that we don't get the outcome that, we're hoping for. And sometimes you kind of get fixated on that. But the reality is it is working, and the data aligns with, we see the stories and the impact of families that we helped years ago, and seeing the transformation in their lives. And but then to be able to see the data. So foster care as a whole has been reduced here in Southwest Florida. All the other surrounding areas have gone up significantly. So Sarasota, Manatee has gone up by 18%. Wow. Southwest Florida has gone down by 2%.
Wow.
And so it's working. It's getting attention from legislators on both ends of the aisles, just wondering, hey, what is going on here? And people have just said, Better Together, the church.
Wow.
It's God's people. They're stepping in, and they are meeting this real need in the community, and it's making a difference. And we see those stories. We see the evidence of that. But then to also be able to see the data and the metrics.
Support it.
It's incredible.
It's awesome. Obviously, there's challenges when you work with people of any demographic. People are messy, right? And so, what are some of the challenges that you guys face day in, day out?
Oh gosh, it is so hard when we come across a mom or a dad who you see their potential, and you get to know them and hear their story, but they are just not ready to initiate the changes that they need to do to be able to help themselves get to a better place. And I think that's been heartbreaking. And we've learned, like, you can't help somebody who's not willing to help themselves. And I think there's a gift that comes with desperation. And we have some families where they weren't ready, and they have to hit rock bottom before they say, hey, okay, it's time. I can't live like this anymore. And I think those are the hardest, is we still love on them. We pray for them. We encourage them. We try to support them in ways that we can. But those are, I think, the hardest situations, because it's broken. Families are broken, culture's broken. And it's just so hard, because there's a lot of distrust. But when they get there and you get those moments, it's incredible. And so every family that we do get to talk to and we get to pray for and encourage, even if they're not ready to take that step, sometimes it happens 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, or we don't hear from them at all. And we might find out years later, that act of kindness or that love, did make a difference. Or, some of it, I remind families that we work with, there's some stuff we'll never see until we're in heaven. Just seen and unseen, but just being obedient to a calling that God's placed in your life, and being able to step out and love on strangers and practice biblical hospitality. that's what God's called us to do, is run towards the broken. And when we do that, God gets the glory in that.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff we might not ever be able to see, but God knows.
Yeah.
And he's got a plan in all of it.
Yeah. So sometimes you do get to see it. What are some of those stories where you get to see it? Like, I'm sure you guys have some crazy cool, just stories of God just showing up in really cool ways. So what are some of those that you guys have seen?
So those are the best. And I'll share actually one of our own families. So we're a host family. We've had 22 kids in our home over the last 8 years. And the very first little boy that we took in, his name was Brett. I was pregnant with my first son, about 7 months or 8 months pregnant, pretty close. And his mom, she was referred by the Department of Children and Families. She had a black eye. The police were called out. Dad got drunk, beat her up. The baby was there, and it just wasn't a safe environment. So we hosted a baby for about 2 weeks while she was working on a safe alternative housing situation. And she thought we were crazy. She called me a psychopath. She couldn't understand why we would voluntarily open up our homes and care for her.
Yep.
We prayed for her, encouraged her, and then we reunified on his first birthday. She worked hard. She got her job lined up. She got housing lined up. And she was ready to be back with her son. And DCF said, yep, let's do this. And so we're in the parking lot, and she's still very defensive, just kind of like, who are you? I don't understand you. And so she asked me, she's like, why'd you do this? Why'd you help me? You don't even know me. And I shared just my own testimony and what God's done in our life. And this is what I believe that God's called us to do, is to love on Kylie and Travis.
Yeah.
So we mentored Travis and Kylie. We continued to work with them. And this was 8 years ago. And Travis got sober, got a job. They got married. They're now in a church up in North Carolina. They just welcomed their third baby, and their lives just look totally different.
Come on.
And so, was it an easy journey? Did we see just the fruit of our labor initially? No, but to be able to see what God has done in their life, and we just played a small part, and all these other people God put in their path continued to he had a plan for them, and we got to play a really critical piece in that. So it's just beautiful to see that, and so many other stories. I mean, I could go on and on about just the amazing transformations of our family's life, and just how loving others and opening up your home, even in my children's lives, look at what God has done through opening up our home and inviting children to literally having the mission field at our dining room table.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible journey.
That's awesome. As I've been talking over the last couple weeks with these podcasts with some of our local partners, several things that keep coming up are Hurricane Ian was crazy, but God did something through it, and so I know you guys had a lot of impact and were able to hit the ground right away and do some really cool things. What was that but God for you guys? So Hurricane Ian hits, but God, how does he use Better Together in the hurricane aftermath?
Wow. I was just amazed by, less than 24 hours, our team and volunteers and our church partners, there's work to be done. Let's do this. And we didn't have a plan. It was chaos. We didn't even have communication or power or water. But it was the right thing to do. And while the government was mending bridges, doing search and rescue, it was incredible to see Better Together working alongside the faith community and volunteers and going to the communities hit hard who didn't have, means of transportation. They couldn't get to a distribution line. And we were knocking on doors and meeting real needs like bug spray. These kids were just covered and it looked like chicken pox, but it was mosquito bites. And these elderly grandparents caring for their children who had special needs. And we were meeting those needs, knocking on doors. We'd say we were going to do something. We'd show up and they'd be like, I cannot believe you came back. I cannot believe it. People have always told us they do this, but they never came back.
Wow.
And so our volunteers were coming back. We were working together, seeing the church, working together. I think meeting those needs, communicating, praying for families. I still have this picture in my mind of this young boy, 14, praying for this elderly lady in Suncoast community. And it's just such a special moment. And it was just amazing just to see, we knocked on over 10,000 doors.
Wow.
If you would have asked me,
wow.
We went in just wanting to help. And then that help just exploded. And it was amazing to see just people continuing to show up, meet those needs, and then all these incredible God-sized stories that came out of that.
That's awesome. So you guys aren't just in Lee County. You guys have now expanded. And so talk a little bit about what does expansion look like? Where are you guys at? And what's the goal? What are you guys hoping to do in the next 3 to 5 years or beyond that?
So we started here, and God has just really been blessing our ministry. We started off just 100% privately funded, and I felt strongly. I was like, this is what God was telling me to do. We need to stay away from government funding and remain privately funded and just work through the church, God's people. We're going to end the foster care crisis, and we're going to do it in Florida first because it's 5 states in one. Yep. We can do it in Florida.
There you go.
And have the stories of transformation aligned with those numbers and data, and where people are just kind of scratching their heads and saying, what is going on? Like we saw here in Southwest Florida. If we can do it here, what a great model for other states and localities to learn from. What a great way to change the narrative, because foster care is a mess.
Yep.
And there's been a lot of really great intention going into trying to fix the system. But the best way to fix that system is to reduce the need for it, to end the crisis. So every child going into the system, those children can stay together with their siblings. They can go to hopefully loving, safe Christian homes, and they can get the support that they need to be able to move forward. And these kids are not lingering in a system of uncertainty. Yeah. And so if we can just really, stand in that gap, prevent the need for it, especially when it comes to neglect, which is preventable if families have the right tools and resources and support, then I really believe we can do that. And people look at me like I am crazy, especially policymakers. They're like, do you know how messy foster care is and how big it is? But I also believe we have a really big God.
Yeah, come on.
And he can do it. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to show him, show I think this country and people that the church can and will end the foster care crisis.
I love that. I love it. So if we zoom back into Lee County for a second, give me a picture of the need. So you guys do several different things, but one of them that you do is the host homes. I know you talked about you've hosted, we've hosted, me and Jess have hosted. We love doing that. So what are the needs as far as host homes? Do you have all that you need? Do you need 20 more host homes? What does that need look like?
We always have a need because all of our kids and families, we try to match our families. And they all come in different zip codes, different ages, different sibling group numbers. So we can always use more host families. And it's not foster care. It's very short term. Yep. It's a really quick process. We can get families approved in 2 weeks. It's a one-time training, background check, references, and a home study, and that's it. And then we have a professional team that will match families in need. We vet them as best as we can, and then we try to match them to families. The average stay is about 41 days, but sometimes it's only 24 hours. Our last hosting was 24 hours of a family that they stole food, and they got arrested. They had no priors. They didn't want to shelter these kids, but they had nobody to pick them up. Yeah. So we cared for those kids less than 24 hours and kept that family together. Cool. So it's short term, it's co-parenting, it's voluntary. We also have mentoring where you just get to walk alongside of a parent. Yep. And you would be amazed by how many parents they feel alone and they have nobody. And what an amazing opportunity just to walk alongside them. And it's not a big commitment. You can meet with them over Zoom, virtually. You have to have at least 2 in-person interactions with them. It could be coffee, it could be lunch. You can do it as family. My husband and I, we mentor families together, and that's our ministry that we get to do together as husband and wife. And then we do job coaching. So you get a lot of families that end up in crisis because of a job. Just like my dad, when he lost his job, small problems became really big problems. And I think, what if my dad had somebody who could have given him coaching and support and then help make a connection to an employer? Could we, prevented all that trauma and everything that we had gone through as a family? And so our job coaching is a really easy way for somebody to transfer some of their soft skills and what they've learned in their professional career. Young or old, it doesn't matter. Everybody has something that they can give and encourage and help somebody in their employment journey.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about, so in the hosting side of things, you said earlier how that brings the mission field right to your doorstep for your kids. And so I know for me and for our church, we talk about parents are the main disciple makers of their kids. And so I've got to be able to give them opportunities to see different stuff. How do you feel like that's helped to shape your kid? What do you feel like that's done for your kids as far as a discipleship aspect to have them be a part of the hostings?
To me, it feels like you're bringing your kid to a mission trip. I remember my first mission trip and what that meant to me and how eye-opening it was. And when you bring these kids into your home, you're teaching them empathy, compassion, and love. We prepare them every time a kid comes into our home, and we help them have an understanding of, why we're doing this. And this is something we're doing as a family. We're serving as an entire family.
Yep.
And our kids are very blessed, and our last hosting, those two little children where their parents got arrested, my son loves dinosaurs, like will not share with his sisters. We're working on that. Yep. But we woke up in the morning and I told him we had some little visitors on the couch, and just, they were a little scared and nervous, and, they don't know us. And so he grabbed his favorite dinosaur, went up to this little boy, and he gives him a big hug, and he says, "You're safe here," and gives him his, dinosaur. And then he's like, "Mommy, I got this." And so he took him by the hand, took him to his room, and they're playing. And I get in there, and I can just, my mama heart is just exploding. And when they went home, he was like, what's going on with, their mom and dad. And so, on his level, had a conversation, and it opened up his eyes to know there's, some kids that don't have food on the table.
Yeah.
And so we got to talk about why we did that and what that meant. And I've just seen this real compassion and love for other people through him. And these are moments that you can't buy or you can't create. They just came so just naturally, and it was beautiful. And just to be able to do that as a family and pray for these kids when they leave. One of the little girls we've had, little Debbie, they now attend our church, her and her mom.
Cool.
So we get to see them every Sunday, and our daughter runs up to little Debbie, gives her a big hug, and it's just been amazing to see her plugged into her own community with other single moms, attending church every Sunday, and, reminding Ellie, hey, because you shared your toys, you shared your room, we loved on little Debbie and helped their mom, now, this is the result, and you were awesome. A big part of it. It wasn't just us. They were a big part of making this happen and loving on this family.
Yeah.
And so it has been incredibly rewarding, definitely challenging.
Yeah, sure.
Always inconvenient.
Yep.
But God really does. I think when you inconvenience yourself and you love on these families, God really just works in your heart and does. If you allow him to just come into those situations, there's so much more beauty and good things that happen out of that obedience of saying yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would concur with all that. Just having your kids be a part of that is a beautiful thing. Like you said, it's like a mission trip in your home, and just helping them see that there's people that live differently, and how do we love all of them in these process, and how do you use, one thing that we say in our house a lot is we're called to steward what we have.
I love
and
that.
So if we have more than we need, it's not for our need. And so it's for somebody else, so how do we steward the extra bedroom, or how do we steward, we specifically got a triple bunk bed for my one boy because we want to have places for other kids to be, so little things like that. I love that you don't have to wait till you're an empty nester to do that. You could do it right with your kids. You don't have to just be empty nest. You don't have to be a certain age. It could be a family thing. It could be an older retired thing. It could be wherever you're at in life. There's a place to kind of plug in with what you guys are doing, which I love. I'd love for you to, on that vein, kind of hit on a couple. We've talked through a couple of them, but what are ways that we can engage? So our church, if they're listening and saying, I love the idea of this, I'd love to be a part of that. What are some kind of key areas and steps for them to take to get engaged?
So just simply learn more. If God's just putting a tug on your heart, reach out, and we'd love to share more of just what that looks like for your family. And we know, this is big, welcoming kids into your home. So we know there's questions, and that's what we want to do is make sure that this is a good fit for your family, walk you through that. But I would encourage you to take that leap, say that yes, and then go from there and see how God uses that. And maybe you're not ready. I'm not ready, welcome kids into my home. We're not there. Offering mentorship and friendship to a family can make so much difference to that family, especially someone who is feeling isolated, alone, and they literally have nobody. We had a mom recently having a baby. The dad had left her. She had one other child, and so we had two families, one host family who cared for the 1-year-old while she was giving birth, and then we had a mentor who held her hand during delivery.
Wow.
And just that moment bonded those two women, and they created this beautiful friendship, and she was there to pray for her, encourage her, and be that mother that she literally never had.
Wow.
And so that mentorship and then wraparound support, when you welcome these kids into your home and you're loving on them, it is an incredible experience, but it's voluntary. You're not getting a paid stipend like foster care.
Yep.
So to be able to not worry about dinner that first night, someone dropped off a lasagna, or they ordered you pizza, or maybe even sent you DoorDash.
Yep.
And then having diapers and formula, and just someone saying, hey, I'm praying for you. How can I pray for you? That makes all the difference in the world. And that's a little thing that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Something that was cool that I didn't expect from this when we hosted was, so we hosted, and obviously when we took on, I think there were three kids, and they were all kind of 9 and younger. And so they were all out riding their bikes, and we're all out in our neighborhood and just playing. And our neighborhood is a very tight community. A lot of people walk their dogs and hang out and stuff. And so people started asking, like, oh, where are all the bonus kids from? What's going on? I was like, oh, here, we're part of Better Together. We're watching these kids. And one of our neighbors who doesn't know Jesus, who we're trying to build relationship with, ended up buying us pizza that night. They're like, can we just buy pizza? And we're like, man, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So it was even cool to help us build even further relationship of why we do what we do in our own neighborhood, which was really special. So it was awesome to be able to be a part of that. So
that was awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you do. I appreciate everything that Better Together does. And I appreciate specifically your passion, that it's personal, and that your belief in the church, that it can stand in the gap and it can end the foster care crisis. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. The rest of y'all, take care. We will see you guys next week with another mission partner as we continue our series, getting to know our mission partners here at Riverside Church. Thanks. Take care.